I personally feel, in my heart of hearts, that if we can expose the dishonesty, the criminality that existed on 9/11, we can expose that. What will happen is we can change the American psyche. And maybe for once, people will begin to question authority. That's possible. Now, how do we get to that one facet of it? And I'll deal with another facet, which is a broader solution to our global problems. And that is real simple. You're not going to get an investigation from the Congress, from the Obama administration. This is not going to happen. And if it did, it would be another cover-up. So that's a red herring. We don't even want to go there. So when you look at the body politic, you say, well, how can we bring something about? Well, we're fortunate enough, as a result of the courageous leadership of politicians and progressives 100 years ago, to have 24 states that have initiative laws where people can make laws. California is one of them. I came up with this suggestion in New York at a conference on 9/11, saying that what we ought to do is write an initiative that would set up a commission that would have subpoena powers or grand jury powers to go ahead and investigate what happened leading up to 9/11, what happened on 9/11, and the aftermath of 9/11, which is 3 wars. One of them, which is totally ridiculous, the War on Terror, which is no more than the economic underpinning for the continuation of the appropriations to the military-industrial complex. That's all that is. And so now if we could get an investigation that would pursue that with some independent powers, well, my bluff was called, or not so much a bluff, but my idea was called and said, well, would you help out do something? Well, we did. I came to, first I had to ascertain, I had my own take on 9/11. It was more political than technical. I just knew from my intelligence background that this was not a go. It doesn't take 18 months to set in motion an investigation, and a fraudulent investigation at that, which is admitted to by the investigators. And so, but I didn't act on it. I was busy doing this other area with respect to the national initiative. So after coming up with this idea, I made a tour of California and came to the conclusion that the 9/11 truth movement is much, much larger than I had anticipated. And it's really coming into its own with this, as of what's going to take place of 10 years next September. And as it's coming into its own, it can be plumbed for support to create a legitimate commission. Now, I also found out that this is not only the United States. In Germany, a reputable poll was taken and showed that 86% of the people do not believe the story about 9/11. They feel it was a false flag operation. Well, they know a little bit more history than most Americans know, because we have a great, great historic tradition of false flag, starting with the Mexican War in 1848, going on to the Spanish-American War, going on to the First World War, going on to the parts of the Second World War, and also in Vietnam with respect to Gulf of Tonkin.
We're here at the studios here right now with George Ripley, and the assistant and supporter of 911cc.org, which is the Citizens 9/11 Commission campaign, working with Senator Mike Gravel, who will be here as the show moves forward. Flyby News came from the Cassini Flyby of Earth, which happened in 1999, where we were exposing a high-risk flyby of Earth with 72 pounds of highly radioactive plutonium on board. And this was heralding the plan for putting weapons in space. And so we decided to, from 1999, to report on news for life survival in the 21st century, whatever news that was most significant. And it was after September 11th, 2001, that the ABM treaty that was preventing weapons from entering space was terminated by President George Bush. And so we switched over our focus from trying to stop weapons into space, which they started putting into space, to trying to get justice and freedom by exposing the events of September 11th that was used for wars. 3 wars, as Senator Gravel says: the Afghanistan war, the war in Iraq, and the horrendous war on terror. Just want to give a quick introduction, and thank you for coming, George Ripley. Can you kind of just how you got involved with this campaign and your position in it and what you're doing?
I've known Mike for many years because of his work, his life's work actually, to establish, offer their citizens the protocols and procedures for taking and making law of, by, and for themselves. So he's put together a lot of work on that. You can find it at vote.org, is a simple website to remember, and it will direct you to his work. And I have also, of course, as an activist in Washington, D.C., where I live now, although I was raised in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, so I'm coming home for this effort. I am also very interested in establishing 9/11 truth, because we can't build the future on a lie. And so working with Senator Gravel on this effort was an easy choice for me to make this year, being the 10th year of the 9/11 lies, the decade of deceit. And so I'm going to devote this year to 9/11 activities, and at the same time promote the ballot initiative with Senator Gravel.
Well, when did you meet the senator? First time?
Well, actually, I was an Alaskan resident for 25 years, so he was my senator for a while there. And then I got to meet him when I moved to Washington, D.C., and he held a conference on ballot initiatives and his effort to establish it in every jurisdiction.
And has it been frustrating as dealing with 9/11, this ballot initiative, because you've been working on it for so long, and it hasn't happened, right? Or except for the state initiatives?
Well, of course, we saw it happen almost, and we're very excited at the effort that the New York City residents put out to reopen the investigation into 9/11. The citizens of the residents, volunteer residents of New York City, spent a year collecting 80,000 signatures to get it on the ballot in New York City, whereby the city itself would reopen the investigation. 80,000 New Yorkers signed that ballot initiative, and yet there were technicalities that enabled the powers that be in the state of New York and the city of New York to throw it out.
So how is the referendum different in Massachusetts than it was in New York City?
Technically, I don't know exactly how the New York City one was. The ballot initiative in question now that we'll be pushing out across the country is unique. It's the first time such a thing has ever been attempted by ballot initiative, for example, to set up a citizens commission with subpoena powers and the power to take oath under testimony. Run by citizens, and we have no interest in seeing it run by Congress. We saw the Kennedy assassination inquiry reopened after 10 years because citizens were so outraged after the Zapruder film was finally released to the public. And it went to a congressional hearing, and again it was whitewashed. So we know full well whether that process will take us here. And we have no interest in proceeding towards a congressional hearing. And indeed, they have shown no interest in holding one. So we anticipate, however, that at such time as we start gaining traction with this idea. They will come to us and say, oh yes, great idea, let us do it. And at that point, we will say, no, we're not interested.
Well, what are the chances? We're aiming for 100,000 signatures by November 27th?
That's correct. Interestingly, there are only 24 states that have ballot initiatives, and the District of Columbia. Only 24 states have this fundamental right that they assure their citizens and empower their citizens with to make law, as Lincoln said, of, by, and for the people. In every case, those state legislators in those states over the years chip away at the law, which is designed to enable people to participate in power. One of Senator Gravel's great quotes is of Cicero, who said, freedom, and we know that's an American value, Cicero said, freedom is the participation in power. And clearly that has a ring of truth to it. So it's a nonpartisan issue. Freedom is an American value, period. And so to participate in freedom, we have to participate in power, and the only real power we as citizens have is ballot initiatives. And so I urge you to go to Senator Mike Gravel's website. You can easily remember vote.org, which will direct you there. His actual site is ni4d.us. ni4d.us stands for National Initiative for Democracy. I'm digressing a little bit, but these are very important issues, both of them, and that's why I'm working on it.
Well, one of the conversations we had in the studio beforehand is there's a lot of dissension within the so-called 9/11 Truth movement. There's actually dissension within the peace movements, and there's a lot of conflict going on with what's the best strategy, what's the best objectives, how do we get from here to there. And the most difficult situation is that everyone's working on their own areas, so there's very little unity, where the architects and engineers, though, individuals are supportive of the Citizens 9/11 Commission. As a group, they're still endorsing lobbying Congress rather than supporting a Citizens 9/11 Commission. Can you speak about that, the difficulty the way I see it is that the base of the problem has a lot to do with the media effects of brainwashing, or telling people that it's such a scary issue that you don't want to know about the truth. You can't handle the truth, as Jack Nicholson said in one of his movies. I see it every day. I see people have a very difficult time.
Well,
they get angry at me.
I'd like to address that. And you touched on a lot of issues, so I'm going to pick a couple. But yesterday morning, Senator Gravel spoke on the Tom Finneran radio program. You may know Tom Finneran was Speaker of the House here in Massachusetts at one point, and as was Senator Gravel before he became a senator. He was Speaker of the House in Alaska. And the question came up about Americans not being able to handle the truth, and that if we expose this, if it's really true that the official story is a lie, then what will that do to America? And certainly we'll have anarchy in the streets. Cooler heads will not prevail. We are, incapable of handling the truth. Mm-hmm. What a silly comment. Right. Utterly absurd. We cannot build the future, a positive future, based on a lie, on the manipulation of the American people into war, eternal war. The war on terror will never end. So clearly, if we want to see positive futures for our grandchildren, we need to straighten up the record of history. And to do that, we need to reopen the investigations into what happened on 9/11. You also brought up something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is the issue of how to bring how to bring the multiple aspects of the movement for truth and positive futures into alignment and into some form of unity when there's disagreement on this or that. Well, first of all, we have to get united about the need to reopen the investigations. We need to put it in a recognized framework that that people of the United States and the world can recognize as having validity, and we can all agree on that.
Legal framework.
A legal framework, that's right. We're a nation of laws, and that is ultimately important. And it's been 10 years. It's now in the hands of the people to do something about it.
Well, you're talking about that steep curve to raise maybe, what, $50,000 every week or so, $40,000 every week for the next 6 weeks?
Yeah, we have to raise, we have a schedule of payments that
and so far, we've only raised around $13,000?
No, well, on the website, from small donations, yes. And the idea behind it originally was that the major donors had begun to question, after 10 years of not seeming to get anywhere, the major donors seem to have withdrawn their support. When Mike did a survey in California with regards to doing just what we're doing here. In California, the effort would cost $2 million to get on the ballot. Here, we're expecting to pay $300,000. But the major donors had seemed to withdraw their support. Over the past year, I had called Mike every month and said, well, how's it going? How's it going? How's it going? And I always was getting a, well, we don't know, we don't know. So finally last May, I told Mike, I said, look, there are thousands of people out there, are millions of people out there who would give $10 a piece to have this happen. And I said, I'll have a website up in 3 days. Well, I'm a technophobe. I've never done a website, but I thought there were templates and things I could do. Well, my enthusiasm helped get others involved, and a professional job was done. You can see our website at 9-11cc, which stands for Citizens Commission, 9-11cc.org, and we would have startup money to make this thing happen. Well, it didn't happen. We've now gotten 13,000. And, well, we recognize that there's a lag time here. The information has to get out, and thank you so much for doing this. But it is beginning to pick up, and well, I dropped the thought.
Well, I'd like to explain one of the great obstacles that I've experienced with why we didn't get 10,000 supporters of a measly $10 on the 10th anniversary of 9/11 was 9/11 Blogger, a site that I was a member of for at least 5 years, and I wasn't allowed to even announce the official kickoff of this campaign on July 4th. And then I was banned because I was making comments. And this is after 5 years of all the work that I did to see that, as some people call it, controlled opposition. There's an infiltration within our movement to do the good work here and there, but they won't unite with any feasible way to get a legal direction going. So that's partly why and then also people pick up on this type of internal conflict, and you have plants, you have people that are coming up with wild theories, and we end up disagreeing more. So there's great opposition. So I keep going back to, well, we have Massachusetts, but we also have Oregon, and I'm wondering how much would that take, and how much time will we have to get
It'll take a similar, the rules there are different. Every state has different laws. Some are more difficult than others. Colorado and Oregon will be easier for us. Another factor, of course, in not getting those $10 donations is that the economy is really in trouble for everyone right now. Everybody's feeling the pinch. Even the donor requests that most people are getting in their emails now have gone down to $5. Send $3 if you can to help this campaign. Our asking for $10 is perhaps a little edgy, you know. I mean, everybody has to.
$10 is not. I mean, I'm in one of those lower brackets, and I don't have any trouble with $10 when you could.
But 9/11 is your one of your big issues. I do want to get this question out with regards to unifying the movement. The movement is bigger than, I'd suggest, is bigger than the 9/11 movement. The movement is for social justice. We need a world that works for everybody.
Right.
Simple as that. We've got to build it on the truth, 9/11 truth, as well as environmental truth, as well as educational truth and labor rights. You know, this all has to pull together. Everyone has to sign this because we're working for a world that works for everyone.
I also like to make another plug. You know, you can give $10 and be part of it, but I try to encourage people to donate at least $25 because you get this DVD of this event in Oakland, which was on May 2011. It's an excellent program with Richard Gage, Bob Bowman, and Kathy McRae, and it was the MC was Peter Phillips from Project Censored, and it's almost a 2-hour program that Ken Jenkins produced this film, and $25 you get it free. So you're not only donating the cause, you get something really beautiful back, and it's worth it. And all I can say is with educational campaigns, there's no failure if you keep going onward, as you're saying, the bigger picture.
But we have taken it to the next level. What Senator Gravel is doing here is taking the 9/11 educational movement to the next level. Now we're acting on what we've all learned. And this is the first opportunity to act on that. So it's, again, it's in the court of public opinion now. Citizens can act on it, and coming to your community soon is this ballot petition. So I hope you'll look for people to get involved with.
Okay, good. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm just glad you got, but I got here. Let's put it that way. I don't have to give excuses on that score. Right. You raised the question of how the commission will operate. First, you have to understand that this has never been done before. And the concept is to use state initiatives in as many as you can get set up for 2012, November 6th, 2012. And so you essentially would have a de facto national initiative. Now, we don't have a national initiative in this country. I've been working on that for 25 years, and if we had the National Initiative for Democracy in place, we could do this in 30 days. And it would probably cost citizens no more than $25,000, $30,000. But in Massachusetts, it's going to cost us upwards of $300,000 and then some to get it done in the period of time that we have. But let's go to the point you raised, which is extremely important. What this idea that I came up with, and then as it developed, I had to really now put some flesh on the bone, meat on the bone also. And so essentially what we're creating is in one state, let's say Massachusetts, which is our flagship at the moment, that will create a commission that will be voted on by the citizens. That commission will have the power to, and obviously the mission to investigate what happened on 9/11. It will have subpoena powers, and it will be able to put people under oath. But you were very prescient. you recognize that you cannot transfer police powers to a commission.
That's correct.
And so, unlike a grand jury, we're transferring grand jury powers, but the grand jury is led these days by the Attorney General and or the prosecutor, and then as a result of their findings, they issue an indictment, and then you proceed through the judiciary process. A trial, appeal, and so forth. It can be either at the federal level or state level. The problem is that we don't have that, but we have to recognize what we do have, and that is it's very significant to have powers of subpoena. So somebody setting foot in the state of Massachusetts, George Bush, Dick Cheney, we lay a subpoena right on them. And they can be arrested if they don't honor the subpoena right then and there. And obviously it's a prima facie case that they won't do it because they're avoiding going to Europe, they're avoiding going to places where they could be subpoenaed. So we would have a very strong case. Now we could put them under oath. That's something that they've never had happen to them. Oh no, they're too high and mighty to be put under oath. My experience has been in politics that it's not the crime that gets them, it's the perjury that gets them. And so they would perjure themselves if they lie to our commission, if it's only, so that's very serious. Now, on that basis, we could turn that evidence over to the jurisdiction in question and say, okay, state of Massachusetts, use your judicial system to prosecute them for perjury. And we got a case for it. We have to prove it, but we have a case for it. So that's really the dynamic that would take place. Now, let's back this up. The other feature of this legislation is a joint powers agreement. Now that's never been used before, the way we're approaching it. And what we're saying is that when Massachusetts passes this as a law, and we get it passed in Maine, we get it passed in Colorado, Oregon, it's like a bucket. They can all jump in the same bucket and add their grand jury powers, because that's what, at the state level, they can add their grand jury powers to this institution. So you're now creating a de facto grand jury across the nation, which means now Cheney can't travel to Oregon, can't travel to Maine, and can't travel to Colorado, and can't travel, well, it gets to be a very interesting situation.
And isn't it possible, if this thing starts snowballing, Massachusetts comes in, Oregon comes in, and the other states come in, right? And it starts snowballing, I think, and public opinion starts being changed and the consciousness raised, certainly with serious and sincere doubts about what really happened, and people wanting to know the truth and demanding a new, open, honest, independent investigation, then there is a chance, okay, then there's a chance that something could actually happen at the national, federal level. Okay, that wouldn't necessarily be congressional, but it might be more than just, it might be more than one state. I mean, it might give us more power.
Well, it could be a judicial direction from like Martha Coakley that certified this ballot initiative. Attorney General could then proceed with criminal investigations, and that would be our interest.
But he's quite right. There's a dynamic that takes place that once you now start doing this, and that's what's so important about the 9/11 Truth Movement, having an actionable plan. It's fine to acquire all this knowledge and all this information, but it goes nowhere if the people cannot act on it. And that's the shortcoming of our system of representative government. The people cannot act on it. All they can do is on election day is give their power away to politicians who have proven repeatedly that they don't want to touch this subject with a 10-foot pole. So as we go forward, we don't know what the unintended consequences will be. And that's the beauty of the undertaking, because right now, 9/11 Truth Movement is blacked out by mainstream media, blacked out by the government, and so all of a sudden, this information that's been garnered over the last 10 years is now being exposed factually Oh, the work is there. One of the beauties of this new investigation, a citizens commission, and we can go into the other key element is the appointment. But the beauty of the citizens commission, they now get to start at a new plateau. If this were 5 years ago, it would be different. Right now we have a body of knowledge that's awesome, and that the government and mainstream media refuse to look at. I just come from Boston, and I was on a radio program, and the questions that were coming in, oh, this guy's a fireman, and oh no, these buildings, building 7 was partially destroyed. Well, the guy's, first off, he's lying, either he's lying in his teeth, he doesn't know what he saw, because you can look at building 7, and it was not partially destroyed, it was all there with minor smoke fires. So that smoking gun is still there very strong. But I won't go into that. I'll just use what my area of expertise is, because I'm the one that thought of this, and there's a reason why I thought of it. And let me just take a moment to tell you, because it's so important. What has floated my boat since I've left public office is that we have to improve upon representative government. Representative government is designed to keep people in civic adolescence. You know, I want this, but I don't want to be taxed. I want that, but I don't. That's adolescent behavior.
Sure, it's under my thumb obedience.
That's right. So what we want is we want to have adult citizens. And how do you become an adult? Just the way you raise your children. You give them more responsibility, and as they perform better and better into adulthood. Well, we need to do that. Well, what's the best way to do that? Is to be able to make Americans lawmakers. The central power of government is lawmaking, not anything else, not the executive, regardless if it's Obama or 10 other ones. It's not the judiciary. It is you make the law and you obey the law. Now, they can skirt it if they have other powers, but that is the process of civilization, making the law. And that's the great contribution of Solon in 592 BC. So now, if we can have a process where we can make the people become lawmakers, and that's this legislation I have. It's called the National Initiative for Democracy.
I know, I was there with you in Virginia in the mid-'80s.
You were.
I was there. I was there at the beginning because I said, this is exactly what...
Wait, who are you? I'm
Doug White. I was there with you in Virginia.
Doug
right?
White.
National Citizens Initiative. I said, yeah, real participatory democracy. Just what we haven't got, just what we need to get. So
no wonder you're so smart, Doug. You've been trailing this subject all along, and it could happen. But most people, say, well, the Congress would never pass this in 1,000 years. Elected officials do not believe in the power of the citizens. They do not. Because I've approached a number of them. They don't even understand what we're talking about. And yet it's scientifically proven. The majority of the constituency is smarter and better able to set policy in this country than our existing leaders, whether it's Obama or Bush or the Congress. It's an appalling situation. And of course people say, well, it's those crazy Republicans that just stole who stole our American dream? Well, I'll tell you, most people don't realize the American dream was stolen back in 1787 at the Philadelphia Convention.
That's right.
When they didn't keep honor with the Declaration of Independence that said, and this is the greatest moral statement of all mankind, all human beings are equal, created equal under God. And so that's what we have. But now, what happened 11 years later, and they turned around and in bed. And it wasn't Madison. Madison got hoodwinked by Pinckney of South Carolina, and in mid-August, when they were able to agree on slavery, it was Katie bar the door, everything fell into place. I'm a George Mason kind of guy. I would have liked to have seen them have another convention, but that didn't happen. But now Madison did a very clever thing. What he did is he had to find a way to be able to get this ratified without going to the people. Now scholars will tell you right now, they couldn't have had the technology to ratify it by the people. That's hogwash. You could ride a horse from Georgia to Maine and be able, and in 30 days. So it took 9 months to ratify it under the convention system they had, which means that you could have had 3 or 4 ratification processes in that 9 months. But what happened was Madison and the others who wanted to keep slavery in there, they recognized what had happened in Massachusetts. And I wonder if the Massachusetts people know what happened. In 1776, when we declared independence, they were, all of these colonial governments were admonished to go out and create a new constitution because you're no longer going to have Britain ruling you. So what they did is they came back in Massachusetts and they, but in 1778, drafted a constitution that included slavery. All states had slavery at the time. That included slavery. And what do you think happened in Massachusetts? The people voted it down. Adams came in, wrote a new constitution in 1780. The people of Massachusetts voted for it. And it was such a strong constitution with respect to slavery that it set up the process to outlaw slavery. Now, in Philadelphia, 9 years later, you don't think that they didn't know that the people would turn down a constitution that included slavery? And so they had to find a way to get around the people. And so what did they do? They set up Article 7, which is the precedent I'm using with the National Initiative. Article 7, very simple, when the 9 states, the conventions, not the people of 9 states, the conventions, which is made up of the leadership of both those that were in Philadelphia and those that were opposed, they got elected, and at those conventions, which barely passed the ratification, but when 9 states ratify this, it becomes the law of those 9 states, which in violation of the law of the Confederation, which required unanimous consent. And just one little segue. Everybody says, well, Madison was opposed to the mob. The people were the mob. That's a lot of hogwash. He made one intemperate statement, just one. But he made 2 statements, actually 3 statements, when they asked him, now he's very proud of his Constitution. And so they're asking him, and this was a question in the proceedings from a delegate from Maryland, and said, well, Mr. Madison, how can we actually do this Constitution that you're talking about? Because it's illegal under the Confederation Constitution that can only be changed by unanimous consent. So, with all in agreement. So Madison responded, well, of course we'll do it with first principles. What's first principles? First principles is the people will just do it, because he defined first principles. And that was a given. In the Revolutionary era, first principles was just known. That's the people acting. Now, we don't have to act today through violence. We can use first principles, and that's what I'm doing with the National Initiative. I go entirely around the government. And we don't have to have 9 conventions. We have the technology today to ask all Americans, do you want to be empowered? And if we have the majority of the people who voted in the last presidential election, then of course we become the law of the land. And this is not, nobody's laid a glove on this in any of the major universities, and I would challenge any constitutional scholar to debate me on this subject. But I've gone on with my monologue. Maybe, Mr. White, you want to ask another question or raise another point?
Well, I think I think one of the important questions that needs to be asked is that, and George Ripley brought it up. Okay, right now, of course, the Congress has no interest in touching this issue with, as you say, a 10-foot pole. But if they start to see some real momentum here, and this initiative in Mass passes, and maybe Oregon passes, and all of a sudden it's really gaining some headway, then what's to prevent the Congress themselves saying, okay, we'll do a new investigation ourselves, okay? And we know
You're too smart.
Right, we know what's going to happen with that.
And I'm not blowing smoke at you. You really here. If I were in Congress and we're on the other side of this issue, or if I was president and wanted to kill this issue like Obama's been doing, I would turn around and say, hey, these guys are going to get a citizens commission going. We better do something about it, because we want a government commission, because we appoint political leaders who we know will act properly. And so what the government will do, if it looks like we're getting traction, they'll go for a government commission. Oh, a good idea. These citizens are just doing a good idea, but we don't trust citizens. We'll appoint our own commission. Now, that's going to be an interesting process. I would maintain that once you get the visibility with the constituency of the nation on this issue with several different states, and then this ploy of the government takes place, then we would obviously engage that ploy. And because, look, we already had, they tried to appoint Henry Kissinger once. Maybe they'll try to get him again in there. And Kissinger can't go abroad because he would be subpoenaed. Henry Kissinger can't travel abroad, because what would happen to Henry is what happened to Pinochet in Britain. So well, I've got a little segue against, but they'll appoint politicians who act properly. That means they'll cover them. There's an unwritten code between the Democrats, Republicans, and this would be the code if any political party got that high, because it's a corrupting process. And the unwritten code is, oh, we'll investigate you and damage you enough so we get elected, but we won't take it to any extreme, unless you're caught stuffing money in your jacket. But we won't take it to any extreme. And that's the code, whether it's Democrat or Republican. And I could give you historic examples on that score that just drive that home. And of course, let me drive one thing home about political parties. In this country, you cannot get to the Supreme Court unless you're bought into by a party. You cannot become president unless you've got a major party. You cannot get into the Congress, or basically have a significant role into the Congress, if you're not party to a party, Democrat, Republican. And yet, in the Constitution of the United States, there's not one word about the party system. And at the time, our founding fathers knew, and they called it factions, and they knew they were a corrupting influence on the process.
They did. George Washington himself said, by the way, George Washington, the only president elected without a political party. George Washington said, political parties are a very, very bad idea, because sooner or later, and always, they will seek power for themselves, first, last, and foremost, corrupting your system.
And unfortunately, under George's first administration, you had the formation of parties with Thomas Jefferson. So Jefferson was forming a party. They had hired publicists that were tearing each other apart, and it was so angry, it angered George Washington so much that he didn't want to run. And so Hamilton prevailed on him to run, and of course, Jefferson was not there in the second term. And then when George found out how scurrilous Jefferson had been towards him, he did not talk with him in the last 2 years of his administration. So the corrupting influence was already there. And of course, keep in mind that Thomas Jefferson would not have been elected president in 1800 if we hadn't had 3/8 of a person having a vote because they're black. Because if you took away the black vote, John Adams got reelected. Interesting process, isn't it? Another Massachusetts, his son, John Quincy Adams, made the statement that the Civil War, which is the only way you could get rid of slavery, the Civil War was the last battle of the Revolutionary War. What a prescient statement that was by that great American. So there's just a lot of interesting history out there, and Massachusetts has played such a significant role, and that's why it's such a pleasure for me, born and raised in Springfield, Massachusetts, French-Canadian immigrants, to come back here and say that, hey, Massachusetts is our flagship. And now the question is, can we raise the $300,000 plus money it takes to do the job? If we can't, that's okay. We got next year. And there could be, and of course we're a day late and dollar short because we just made it under the wire on August 3rd. We got it approved by the Attorney General, Coakley. And so, and what's interesting is though this process has never been done before and is somewhat unique, it's already been agreed to by the Legislative Council of California, which is illegal. They're the ones that would lay into it if it were illegal. And also the Legislative Council of State of Oregon, and now by the Attorney General of the state of Massachusetts. So we're in pretty good legal shape that we can now take this to other states and tweak it a little bit and then file.
I find we have some great competition. As you said, after the Civil War, they gave corporations the rights of an individual. They call it human rights for the which I found out it was actually a clerk that implemented that ruling, and then it later was claimed as precedent by the courts.
It was a case. It was a case in I think 1888. Do you remember it?
Yeah, Dartmouth. Wasn't it Dartmouth?
No, not Dartmouth. It was
Santa Clara County.
Santa Clara County, that's right.
Santa Clara County. And what it is you're quite right. I don't know if it was a clerk or not, but they slipped it into a footnote.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, corporation leaders, the robber barons of the period looking at this footnote, my God, well, let's build on that. And they did. And to the point now, we're at the extreme where the Supreme Court with Citizens United has said that corporations can now pour money into a presidential campaign. It's interesting, a friend of mine, some people were asking me to run again, that's a whole other issue. But we looked into it, and for some reason the FEC has not honored this corporate money. So I haven't done the research to really see what's going on. But clearly, you can aggressively take a stand. We're going to take corporate money, and some have been doing it because the Supreme Court has ruled. Now, whether the FEC catches up with that ruling, that's a whole other issue.
I like to say, I thought George's idea of a $10 campaign to get 10,000 supporters was brilliant. If there was unity amongst the people that are aware of wanting a 9/11 commission, but again, the overwhelming control of people's minds, the fractionating the movement, the architects and engineers doing their thing, the New York City people are doing their thing. We couldn't get that 10,000 because there wasn't enough unity within the people that would like to see a new investigation. And I'm so glad you're willing to give it another year if we don't succeed in Massachusetts, because I am beginning to have my doubts. But because of the money so far and the how many there are of us to really make this happen.
And we got a taste of that in Boston. When I first off, the 9/11 Truth Movement was very happy I came into the scene because I'm not tagged as a conspiracy person. I've just got my own credentials. They saw those credentials in the presidential election, or they saw that with my background when I was a senator. So they were happy I came on the scene because I added a new voice, a fresher voice, so to speak. But yet, one day after that, I was interviewed in Detroit, Michigan, and this interviewer was trying to tag me as a conspiracy nut. Man, I crawled his frame and then some with a pitchfork, and he backed away real hard. And the position I take is real simple. George is very informed on this, and I know you are too, and I know you are, about what's been going on in the last 10 years with the 9/11 Truth Movement. What I've done in the last 10 years and then some is concentrate on direct democracy. And why I was able to think of this device is because of my foundation and knowledge in constitutional matters for direct democracy. But as far as I'm concerned, I come to the table now not trying to play catch up with all this wonderful work that's been done by scientists. It's to just say, hey, I have an actionable plan. We can now take all this work you've done and put it into the hands of the people where they can do something about it. And those are my credentials, and that's as far as I want to go. And people want to argue with me. In fact, when I hear people in these talk shows, oh, this is what happened or that's what happened, I don't want to go there, because when you're in a talk show, all the people know this guy, he said, I'm a fireman. Like one guy, I'm a fire chief, and I saw half of Building 7 destroyed before it came down. Well, the guy's either illiterate, needs a new set of glasses, or he's a fraud, he's a flake. We don't know that. But with all due respect, if he's a fireman, then let him put out fires in his own communities. And I was asking somebody today, could we do it which would be the election of 2013. But you see, we got to keep in mind, this is a long process. This has got to all jump on the table. If we just got to get it enacted into law someplace, and then people can, with a much simpler process. Let's say, supposing we get it enacted in Oregon. Well, we can change the language where it doesn't have to be this way. It can be just the people of California merely want to join through the Joint Powers Agreement. Don't have to have all this other verbiage. Just that join the Joint Powers Agreement. Now, why this is critical is in Massachusetts, see, we can't put a dollar amount on what we want to raise. It flies against your Constitution. And in California, we can put a dollar amount, and we got a dollar amount, 50 cents per person, which would bring in $20 million. But we can't name the members of now what they did is they named me and Cynthia McKinney, and I was just very, very upset over that. But that's the draft that we have. But now what we can do is go back to California, take my name out of it, take Cynthia's name out of it, and do what we have in the text in Oregon and California, which says that the steering committee that is pushing to bring about the enactment of 9/11 Commission, Investigation Commission, that steering committee, which is made up of myself, George. We're going to have 3 people, the key actors in Massachusetts, people from Oregon, people, and I see you with your brain power. You may get it roped in, but it will have a commission somewhere, a steering committee, 25, 30 people, whatever. Then we will solicit across the nation. And now this time we got some visibility. So anybody that wants to nominate, and it probably will be several thousand, that's okay. Because we will then hire a vetting firm to just go through and investigate all these people and zero it down. You know, I'll give you an example, a person that in my mind, because I don't always agree with him, but we're good friends, and that's Ralph Nader. In my mind, old Ralphie would be a good person on the commission. He's got his own credentials. And now, we don't always have to have a celebrity credentialed person to be on the commission. We just need a person who's got wisdom, who's got knowledge, and has got the guts to go wherever the criminality leads.
Wherever the investigation takes us.
That's right. And that takes a little bit of guts. You can't be afraid. So that's the process of how this will be nominated. And that, of course, is legal. It's already been bought into in Oregon. It's been bought into Massachusetts. And so we're over that hurdle.
Did you come from Springfield to end up as a senator of Alaska? I'd like to hear that story. I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah, don't go too far away because I want to talk to you before we leave. Okay, what happened, I was educated in Springfield, then went to Assumption in Worcester, 5 years, and then we ran out of money, and then so I went to AIC for 1 year, and then went into the service during the Korean War for 3 years, and I was a combat infantry platoon leader, but I also had an intelligence MOS. My class from Benning went to Korea. That was a time when second lieutenants were a Kleenex, and they had this patch, "Follow me up the hill." And so, but for the grace of God, I was sent to Europe because of my intelligence background, and served as adjutant for the Communications Intelligence Service, which was so secret we had the CIC, the Counterintelligence Corps, as our cover.
Okay.
And so I served for 2 years in Europe, came back to the United States, did 2 years at Columbia. I was tired of working full-time and going to school full-time, so I've been involved in politics since I was 15 years old. So I went to Alaska because I didn't like cold weather, and I wouldn't have had a chance in Massachusetts getting elected statewide from Western Mass and French Canadian background.
Right.
So, and as I was on the, this was a state ruled by the Irish and the Italians, as far as I could see. But Alaska offered an opportunity. It was a territory at the time. And as soon as I got there, I ran for the territorial legislature and I lost. I ran for the city council and I won. And now we became a state. I lost again. I ran for the state, now the state legislature, and I won. Ran again, won big, promoted that into becoming, went from freshman to Speaker of the House, and then ran for Congress, and after that lost, stepped over too many political bodies, and then ran for the Senate and won and served 12 years in the Senate. And I'm glad that I left at the end of 12 years, because 12 years is enough.
I'd like to read something from Robert Bowman, who wrote this on September 12th.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent.
And he was just endorsing this campaign. He's been going through. He was a lieutenant colonel that served in Vietnam, 100 combat missions, and under Presidents Ford and Carter, he was the director of Star Wars while it was still classified. And then he became a whistleblower under President Reagan when they were saying Star Wars is for defense, and all his colleagues were begging him. We had him here and we interviewed him, and I'm going to also show a clip inserting in this film about his 3-minute
I know him very well.
presentation about Building 7. There's our man. So this is what Robert Bowman wrote on September 12th. Having just endured the interminable pablum put out by mainstream media on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, let us reflect on what's real. Lots of people in the movement think they know who did it. Many think they know how. I'm not so sure, but there are a few things we can all agree upon. The government's official conspiracy theory is a lie. It is physically impossible. To see a few of the many ways it is impossible, watch any of my many speeches on YouTube or go to the website thepatriots.us. The point is, we have absolute certainty that it was not just 19 Arabs with box cutters and an old man on a dialysis machine in a cave. They could not have gotten our air defenses to stand down. They could not have installed the explosives and nanothermite, which are proven to have been in the 3 WTC buildings, which came down. And they could not have orchestrated the massive destruction of evidence and the cover-up which followed 9/11. We need a new independent investigation with subpoena power to expose the government lies and discover the truth. Only then will we be able to reverse the results of 9/11, disastrous corporate wars of aggression, loss of our constitutional rights, and the transfer of trillions of dollars from working Americans to the bankers and weapon manufacturers and oil companies. My old friend, Senator Mike Gravel, is working on a plan to get the investigation we need through Citizens Initiative. First in Massachusetts. I urge everyone to get behind his efforts. The people of Massachusetts should sign the initiative and get their friends and family to do so. Most importantly, when we encounter differences of opinion in the movement over the details of who and how, or over tactics, let us take a deep breath and reflect on the core truths which we all share. We must stand united for the truth shall set us free. Robert Bowman, the Patriots.
And of course, it's a statement that's well done.
Well, one of the questions that anyone who's going out seeking ballot signatures is going to get is that, what's the point of this? 10 years has gone by. Why is the truth so very important to Americans, okay? That is an issue that will come up again and again, and I'd like to hear you, Senator Gravel, tell us exactly why you think knowing and finding out the truth, why it is so very important.
You're right on target with your questions. I addressed that in a paper that I wrote that I think is on our website at 9-11cc.org. It's called An Actionable Plan. And in a second paragraph, it deals exactly with that subject. Because in talking to people, the ordinary person, why do we need this? 10 years have gone by. My God, what's going to happen? And then on the TV program, the radio program on the Monday morning, this guy called in a question. Well, if you succeed and you show criminality, there'll be anarchy in the streets. People will all it'll be terrible for our country. Well, let me tell you how terrible it is to be lied to by government. That's what's terrible. And this question, why do we need another investigation? Why do we? Well, here, Barack Obama answered that question right after he got sworn into office. He said, "We won't look back." Well, boy, that is the greatest disservice you can do to a democracy. That's what a leader is doing to destroy our democracy. We don't look back. We don't want the people to know what's going on. Remember when Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon? His excuse was the fix had been in, from my point of view, but his excuse was the American people can't handle the trial of a president. Well, I'll tell you, the American people could not only handle the trial of a president, they would welcome the trial of a president. Because if a president does wrong, then it needs to be brought out and dealt with. And so what I said to this guy on Monday when he said, oh, the truth will destabilize and ruin our country. What's ruining our country are the lies that go from the government to the people, and then the people are then lulled into a militaristic culture that then thinks it's okay to go anywhere in the world and go to war, and that we Americans are so great, we're so triumphant. We need a little bit of humility in this country. We need to recognize that we can make mistakes as citizens, but we know for sure our leaders make mistakes constantly. That's the reason I'm so locked in to direct democracy. I know the only answers to people. And so why we need a new investigation is because we need to inform the American people as to what really went on. And what will that cause? That won't cause anarchy in the streets. What it will cause, a rebirth of freedom in the people of this country, recognizing what Cicero said several thousand years ago, and that is, freedom is participation in power. And you will participate in that power if you know the truth, and then will demand a role where you can become a lawmaker. That's the reason why I think that this is so significant, because it will set in motion a chain reaction that will strengthen our democracy. Here, Abraham Lincoln closed his Gettysburg Address by saying, of the people, by the people, and for the people. Well, we have never had, and I don't mean to correct Abraham Lincoln, but we've never had a government by the people. We now create the national initiative. We will, for the first time, have a government by the people, and the people will want this if they realize how bad their leadership is performing. And that's the whole task of why we need a new investigation. The truth, hey, this is from the Bible. The truth will set you free.
And, that's correct, thank you. And without a knowledge of the truth, how can any adult in America make an intelligent, well-informed decision?
They can't. They can't. And that's the reason why the military-industrial complex and corporate America, which is, of course, Wall Street, have turned around and control our entire society. And a person like, whether it's George Bush, who I had very little respect for his mentality, and then along comes Barack Obama, who gives you hope. And then when I first met him, I had the same conclusion then that I have now. But I voted for him. I had hope, like everybody else, that maybe he's going to do something when he gets it. He did. What you see today with Barack Obama, not the speeches, what's evidence, what he does, that is Barack Obama in spades. And make no mistake about it. And he's going to spend $1 billion to get reelected. And of course, we got the crazies over there that would be on the other side. I mean, we've got a horrible situation staring us in the face. When he gave his jobs speech, same old, same old. But when you flashed up the camera, goes up to the family gallery, and I'm familiar with that gallery. His wife was there. Did you recognize two other people? The head of General Electric, Immelt, who did more to chase jobs from this country than any other CEO in American history. And of course, Obama appointed him his jobs czar. What was that about? Hey, it's money. It's money. And did you see the other person that you recognize up there? Steve Case, the guy the billionaire from AOL. That's who was in the family gallery. Isn't that interesting? He's taking care of his friends in a very personal way. Sit up there with my wife. Know that I care for you. This is politics, corrupt politics at its best.
What was your turning point regarding being aware of that direct democracy approach? Was there any moment?
Yeah, I grappled with this when I was a senator. First off, I got to be a senator, and I was the one that started the nuclear critique. This is where it really happened. The nuclear industry, when I started asking questions about testing in Alaska, all of a sudden the contractor who was doing the work on Amchitka Island with the Cannikin test opened up a PR office in Anchorage and was starting to put out the message that, well, anybody that questions this nuclear testing is not patriotic. Well, who was the other person on earth that was questioning what was going on was me. They didn't use my name, but they were laying the groundworks to undercut me. Well, all that did was make me angrier and doing more investigation. So I was able to stop the testing. Good. I picketed with 2 members of the Canadian Parliament a sign in front of Richard Nixon's White House. We picketed. And this is my claim to fame on this other area, and that was that a group of, because this was an international effort, a group of citizens concerned citizens, environmentalists in Vancouver bought a boat, and they were going to sail that boat to Amchitka Island to protest. The name of that boat, and of course they had to form a corporation, and the name of the corporation was the name of the boat, Greenpeace. That's when Greenpeace started. Nice. And so my little role in history. But we were able to, and you want to know about whistleblowers. After that test, the media and the leadership of the country and the president all excoriated me. And I was a senator, I could take that. But lo and behold, somebody at the Defense Department slipped me a memo that said that, and I don't even know the person's name, didn't even want to know it. I had the memo on government stationery, and it said that the testing, they were going to do more testing, that the testing they were doing at Amchitka Island was for a warhead, a nuclear warhead that was of a missile that was obsolete. But somebody had the contract, and they're going to continue making money. Does that now tell you how the military-industrial complex operates? Whether we need it or not, they got a contract, they're going to pay the lobbyists to keep that contract going. So I could give you a lot more but now that led me into, and I don't know if we're running out of time and you want to ask another question, but this whole nuclear game. In fact, why is Obama still for nukes? After Fukushima Daiichi, which I'll tell you, the impact of that is not over by a long shot. But Obama is still for supporting nukes in the United States. Why? Well, General Electric, Immelt, sitting in the gallery next to his wife, that's the largest corporate entity dealing with nuclear activity in the world. That's the reason why General Electric and Howard Dean conspired to get me out of the debates in September of '07. Because I was getting traction with the American people. And they did not want this message, because from their point of view, I'm a loose cannon. They don't know what I'll come out with next. And they're right. From their point of view, I am a cannon, and I've been after them for all of my public life. There's a book out called A Political Odyssey, which is my public life going after the military-industrial complex. Please, Mr. White.
Strategy question. In order to be effective in getting 100,000 ballot signatures here in Mass, we need to raise at least $300,000. Now, do you have any thoughts about how we might go about doing that? Because time is of a critical nature here.
Well, we're stuck in a situation where we almost need angels. You know what an angel is politically? That's the guy that's got a big checkbook that will write a $100,000 check or $50,000 check. We got a pledge from a guy who's a movie star. I won't go into his name because we haven't got the money yet. But it was supposed to have moved yesterday. But that's only $50,000. As George, I think, pointed out, we got a cash flow looking us in the face of $40,000 a week for 6 weeks. That's a big number.
And it would include that 50,000 because that's your foreign money.
Pardon me?
That would be foreign money, so it wouldn't go, that 50,000.
We could raise. We approached the Attorney General of the United States, and can we raise foreign money? And there's no prohibition against it in the United States.
Oh, very good.
No prohibition. Now, if you're a political candidate running, you can. Now, a person would say, well, why would you use foreign money? Well, here, 90 nations lost citizens at the World Trade Center.
Right.
90 different nations. I know 23 were Canadian. And I just come from a meeting in Toronto, a 5-day meeting with George here, and we had more PhDs you could shake a stick at giving testimony to a group of PhDs, and one of them was the Chief Justice of the Italian Supreme Court Emeritus. And he was there putting these people under the magnifying glass. So, no, the effect of 9/11 was global. And I happen to know that there was a poll taken earlier this year in Germany, and 89% of the Germans did not believe the American government's storyline over 9/11. These Germans believe it was a false flag operation. Well, all I can tell you is there's more foreigners that are suspicious of our government than Americans are suspicious. And that's a sad reflection. That's because I referred to earlier that, what we have is the military-industrial complex has acculturated our society to a militarism. To run the flag up, salute the boys. Well, if they really cared about the American soldier, they would take him out of Afghanistan, they would take him out of Iraq. And of course, if they really cared about justice, they would do away with these contracts to the Blackwater types who are both in Afghanistan and in Yemen and other places. We have to stop going around the world killing people and pay attention to ourselves. We have Americans that are hurting. And the fear that goes abroad, whenever you go through an airport and you go through that charade, I gotta tell you, that is designed to keep you in fear. You have a greater likelihood by 1,000 times of getting cancer than ever being damaged by a terrorist. And one of the questions that was asked in the course of the last presidential election, and I happened to be the last one of the 8 standing there, and they said, well, who are our enemies? Well, everybody, including Obama and Hillary, well, it's North Korea, it's Iran, they named the usual suspects. When it got to me, and I just felt so good that they all expended their best shot, I said, we don't have enemies. We go out and create our enemies. That's what we do in this country. And so that's what has to stop. And of course, Obama got elected, Hillary got to be Secretary of State. We continue to create our enemies. They're trying to gin up a war with Iran. I could go into a major seg onto Iran, but that's not the time to do it. Yeah.
Deb, please.
Yes, hello. Hi, Mike. My name is Deb Chandler.
Is Deb?
Deb Chandler.
Deb, okay.
Yes. I know I've watched a lot of the films and I've read a lot of the information that does conflict with the official story of what happened on September 11th. I'm thinking that some of the folks who might be watching this program aren't familiar with some of that probably irrefutable evidence. And I'm wondering if here we could mention a few of the things and mention maybe the website that has the, for example, the architects and engineers.
I'd like to have you answer, George answer it. I'm going to stick to politics. Okay. That's my strong suit.
Okay.
I'm going to read the endorsement from Stephen Jones, the physicist, who investigated.
But where to go, to give her where to go other than your testimony.
The architects and engineers website.
Yeah.
Oh, there's ae911truth.org.
Got good stuff.
Flybynews.com has a very good investigative news resource on 9/11, and 911cc.org is the plan. So,
And again, to reiterate, AE911truth.org.
9-11.org.
And this is what Jones said, because
CC.org,
he's an
sorry.
authority as far as I'm concerned, and sincere.
Richard Gage?
No, Stephen Jones, full professor of physics, Brigham Young University. He's retired. I fully endorse the call for a significant investigation of 9/11 with subpoena power and free of federal government interference. There are many Americans and others who will testify under oath and allow us to find out. 1. Why were there no air defenses that day? 2. Why did WTC-7 fall at free fall acceleration for over 100 feet? 3. Who was involved in the put options on United and American Airlines just before 9/11? 4. How did active thermitic material end up in the WTC dust in abundance? 5. Who ordered the destruction of the WTC steel, the evidence of the great crime against America? And he's one of the professors that did a peer review article in Open Chemical Physics Journal regarding the thermite that was discovered by 4 different sources in New York City right after the And I'm also going to show the Bob Bowman 3-minute insert that shows BBC reporting that this building fell before it fell, and when you see it fall, that's all you have to do. Remember, building7.org is another website for seeing the obvious.
Sorry, if I could also mention, I believe that the testimony given at the Toronto hearings is available in archive on their website too.
Right, and that's
Toronto.
flybynews.com. If you go under critical breaking news, I have it linked to the YouTube presentations of Senator Gravel and others that you can catch.
There was
beautiful.
the woman scientist that talked about the nanothermite.
Yes.
I'll add a little mind trick if people have a hard time remembering some of the things. Remember the word phase, P-H-A-S-E.
Yeah, good. Go ahead.
And P is for pulverization. What we saw when the building started to fall was total pulverization of all the concrete, which then turned into a mushroom cloud as the steel collapsed inside. So pulverization is P. H is heat. There was molten steel in the basement of the Twin Towers and Building 7 for 3 months, till December 10th. The last fire was put out. And they attempted to put those fires out by pouring lakes, as they said, of water into the basement, and they were unable to put those fires out. Molten steel burned for 3 months in the basements. So pH, pulverization, heat. A is acceleration. Those buildings accelerated as gravity would allow in free fall speed. Building 7, NIST agreed finally, 10 stories, 100 feet, it fell at free fall acceleration into its own footprint. That's the S, symmetry. But the acceleration means that there was no resistance. No resistance for 10 stories, 100 feet. That means that all supports were removed instantaneously, globally throughout the building. So S is symmetry. They fell into their own footprint.
I'm tired.
And E, finally, is ejection. One would think if those buildings were just falling as a force of gravity, that there wouldn't have been steel girders weighing 2 tons ejected the length of 2 football fields and impaled into neighboring buildings. So, I mean, this isn't spring steel we're talking about. These steel girders didn't go boing and spring over there. They were blown out. So, P-H-A-S-E, phase, pulverization, heat, acceleration, symmetry, and ejection.
Well, we have another program this evening. I just want to thank everyone that came here and anybody watching this interview. And Senator, this has been a pleasure to be with you and an honor.
Mine.
And we're together. And George Ripley,
Nice to meet you, Jonathan. Thanks.
And thank you very much.
The evils started by 9/11 are with us today and getting worse. And the only way to stop them is to destroy the official myth of 9/11 and get some truth told for a change. My job is to convince you that we need a new independent investigation of 9/11. Following me is my old dear friend, Senator Mike Gravel. We have worked together for 20 to 25 years on getting a system whereby ordinary people like us can have an influence on making our own laws. Starting with Philadelphia 2 and continuing to this day, Mike is working on how we accomplish things that our bought and paid for legislators and representatives won't. And so that's where I am, in the middle. Richard's convinced you we've been lied to about 9/11. Senator Mike Gravel will say, how do we get a new investigation? My job is to sort of tie in between those two. And there are a lot of evils that we face in this country today, and most of them are a direct result of the lies of 9/11. We are fighting two corporate wars of aggression. We're, looks like, on the verge of a third. We have lost the majority of the rights guaranteed to us in this Constitution and Bill of Rights through the misnamed Patriot Act and the Military Commissions Act, Presidential Directives 20 and 51, all the other things that we got from the imperial presidency of Cheney Bush. And unfortunately, for those of us who thought maybe there was a glimmer of hope for change we could believe in the last few years we've seen nothing but chump change, and the evils have continued and in some cases gotten worse. President Obama has expanded the war in Afghanistan, extended it into Pakistan. And why? Well, he says, this is a war of necessity. Those are the folks that attacked us on 9/11. And that is not true. And he ought to know it, because before he was elected president, I spent an hour in his office in the Senate. I only got to say a few brief words to Barack Obama himself, but I spent an hour with his chief of staff, the same fellow who is now his chief of staff in the White House. And I explained why we needed a new investigation of 9/11, why we needed to impeach George W. Bush, and why we needed to end the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq right away. I even showed him my 3-minute smoking gun video of Building 7.
Building number 7 at the World Trade Center was a 47-story building with a steel frame. No airplane crashed into it, nor did the towers fall onto it. However, this building disintegrated on September 11th.
More on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know, but New York very much a city still in chaos. The phones are not working properly, the subway lines are not working.
July 24th, 2001, Larry A. Silverstein, who already owned World Trade Center 7, signs a $3.2 billion 99-year lease on the entire World Trade Center complex 6 weeks before 9/11. Included in the lease is a $3.5 billion insurance policy, specifically covering acts of terrorism.
PBS has a documentary called America Rebuilds, in which Larry Silverstein, the landlord of Building 7, explains what happened.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.